The night I opened my front door to my ex's sister, I thought I was just helping someone escape a storm. I had no idea that one simple act of kindness would change both of our lives forever. The rain was falling so hard that it sounded like thousands of tiny rocks hitting the roof. The wind shook the trees outside, and flashes of lightning lit up the neighborhood every few seconds. Then my phone rang. When I looked at the screen, I froze. It was Rachel. Not my ex. Her sister. Before we begin, if you enjoy heartwarming stories about kindness, second chances, and the moments that remind us what really matters, please like this video, subscribe to Echoes of Stories, and leave a comment sharing where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. I answered the call. Rachel sounded nervous. "Hey, Jake. I'm sorry to bother you." "It's okay." "What's wrong?" "My car broke down on Highway 14. The tow truck can't get here for another 2 hours. The storm is getting worse." I looked outside at the sheets of rain. "Where are you now?" She told me. The location was only 15 minutes away. "I'll come get you." "No, you don't have to. I'm already grabbing my keys." 20 minutes later, Rachel climbed into my truck, soaked from head to toe. She looked exhausted. Life hadn't been easy for her recently. After my divorce from her sister, most of the family stopped talking to me. Rachel was the only one who occasionally checked in. Not because she took sides. Because she was simply kind. The drive back was quiet. The storm seemed determined to flood every road in town. When we finally reached my house, the weather report on the radio issued a warning. Travel was strongly discouraged until morning. Rachel stared through the windshield. "I should probably find a motel." I laughed. "In this weather?" She shrugged. "I don't want to be a burden." I looked at her. "Rachel, stay here. Storm's too bad." She hesitated. Then she smiled. "Only if I'm not taking the couch." I couldn't help laughing. "What?" "If I'm staying here, we're both adults. I'm taking the guest room." "Deal." For the first time that evening, she relaxed. Inside, I handed her a towel and made coffee. The storm raged outside while we sat at the kitchen table talking. At first, the conversation stayed light. Work. Family. Life. Then somehow we ended up talking about harder things. She told me she had recently lost her job. The company she'd worked for nearly 10 years had downsized. She had been searching for work for months. Bills were piling up. Savings were disappearing. "I feel like I'm failing," she admitted quietly. I understood that feeling. After my divorce, I'd spent years rebuilding my life. There were days I thought I'd never get back on my feet, I told her. "What changed?" I thought for a moment. "People." "What do you mean?" "Kind people." I told her about the neighbor who helped me move into my tiny apartment after the divorce. The coworker who secretly paid for my lunch when money was tight. The stranger who gave me encouragement during one of the hardest years of my life. None of them solved my problems. But every act of kindness gave me enough strength to keep going. Rachel listened carefully. Then she said something I never forgot. "Funny how the smallest things can save someone." The next morning, the storm finally passed. Sunlight poured through the windows. Rachel's car was still in the repair shop, so I drove her there. Before she left, she hugged me. "Thank you." "Anytime." A few weeks passed. Then one afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Rachel. This time she sounded excited. "I got a job." "That's amazing. I start Monday." I could hear genuine happiness in her voice. For the first time in months, things were looking up for her. I thought that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. 3 months later, I received a package. Inside was a small framed photograph. It showed a community center I'd never seen before. Attached was a handwritten note. Jake. You probably don't know this, but the night of the storm changed something for me. When I was sitting at your kitchen table, feeling like my life was falling apart, you reminded me what kindness looks like. After I started my new job, I began volunteering at this community center every weekend. The people here have taught me something important. Kindness spreads. One person helps another. Then that person helps someone else. And before long, lives start changing. Thank you for giving me hope when I needed it most. Rachel. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I noticed something written at the bottom. P.S. Come visit sometime. A month later, I did. The community center sat in a modest part of town. Nothing fancy. Just a building filled with people trying to help one another. Rachel greeted me at the door. I barely recognized her. Not because she looked different. Because she carried herself differently. She seemed confident. Happy. Purposeful. As she showed me around, I met volunteers tutoring children, serving meals, and helping families find resources. Then an elderly man approached us. You must be Jake. I smiled. That's me. He shook my hand. Rachel talks about you all the time. I looked at her, embarrassed. She laughed. The man continued. She helped me when I was sleeping in my car after losing my apartment. Then a young mother joined us. She helped me find childcare. Then another volunteer. Then another. One after another, people shared stories about Rachel's kindness. I stood there amazed. All because of one rainy night. All because someone who needed help had been shown compassion at exactly the right moment. As we walked to the parking lot later, I asked Rachel something. Do you ever think about that storm? She smiled. All the time. Why? She looked toward the sunset. Because it reminds me that people don't always need grand gestures. What do they need? She thought for a moment. A safe place for one night. A conversation. Someone who listens. I nodded. She was right. The most powerful acts of kindness are often the simplest. A door opened. A seat offered. A meal shared. A phone call answered. Years later, I still keep Rachel's note. Whenever life feels difficult, I read it again. It reminds me that we rarely see the full impact of our actions. The kindness we show today may become the hope someone carries tomorrow. And that hope may inspire them to help countless others. So if you ever have the chance to be kind, take it. Offer the ride. Make the call. Open the door. You never know whose life might change because of it. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness creates echoes that travel farther than we could ever imagine. 6 months passed after my visit to the community center. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Work was steady. My house felt less empty than it once had. And every now and then, Rachel and I would exchange messages about the people she was helping through the center. One Friday evening, just as I was finishing dinner, my phone rang. It was Rachel. But this time, something sounded wrong. Her voice was shaking. Jake, can you come to the center? What happened? It's Emily. The name hit me like a punch. Emily. My ex-wife. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Rachel continued. Please. I'll explain when you get here. I grabbed my keys and drove across town. When I arrived, Rachel was waiting outside. Her eyes were red from crying. What happened? She took a deep breath. Emily lost everything. I stared at her. What do you mean? The company she worked for closed. Then she got behind on rent. She never told anyone how bad things had become. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Rachel looked away. She was too embarrassed to ask for help. I followed her inside. There, sitting alone in a corner of the community center, was Emily. The woman I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. She looked completely different. Not older. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too many burdens alone. When she saw me, her eyes widened. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she looked down. I didn't know Rachel called you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Rachel quietly stepped away, giving us privacy. I sat across from Emily. How are you? She laughed bitterly. That's a funny question. Neither of us knew what to say next. Divorce leaves scars. Even years later. Finally, Emily spoke. I heard about what you've been doing here. I frowned. What do you mean? Rachel told me how you've been supporting the center. Helping families. Donating supplies. I shrugged. It wasn't just me. No, she said softly. But it mattered. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then she surprised me. I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? For how things ended. The words seemed difficult for her to say. I spent years blaming you. Tears formed in her eyes. But the truth is, we both made mistakes. I didn't know what to feel. Anger had faded long ago. What remained was mostly sadness. And now, seeing her like this, I felt something else. Compassion. Not because of who she used to be. Because she was a human being hurting in front of me. Rachel had been right all those months ago. Sometimes people simply need someone who listens. Over the next hour, Emily told me everything. The job loss. The debt. The anxiety. The loneliness. Most painful of all, she admitted she had pushed away nearly everyone who cared about her. Including her own family. I didn't want anyone seeing me fail. I nodded slowly. I understand. And I did. More than she realized. When she finished talking, she looked exhausted. What happens now? She asked. I glanced around the community center. Then I remembered something Rachel once told me. Kindness spreads. Not because people deserve it. Because people need it. I stood up. Now we figure things out. Emily looked confused. What do you mean? I mean you're not alone. For the first time that evening, tears rolled down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness. Relief. The following weeks became something none of us expected. Rachel helped Emily update her resume. The community center connected her with temporary work. Several volunteers helped her find affordable housing. One retired accountant even spent hours helping organize her finances. Little by little, her situation improved. Not because one person rescued her. Because many people showed up. One act of kindness after another. One hand reaching out after another. The same way Rachel had once been helped. The same way I had once been helped. One afternoon, months later, the three of us sat outside the center watching children play. Emily looked happier than she'd been in years. She turned to Rachel. You saved me. Rachel shook her head. No. Then she pointed toward me. He gave me a place to stay during a storm. She pointed to herself. I helped here because of that. Then she pointed toward the building. These people helped you. She smiled. Nobody saves anyone alone. The words stayed with me. As the sun began to set, families laughed nearby. Children chased one another across the grass. Volunteers carried boxes into the building. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There was no grand speech. No miracle. Just ordinary people choosing kindness. And somehow, that felt even more powerful. Because real kindness rarely makes headlines. It happens quietly. In living rooms. On rainy nights. At kitchen tables. Inside community centers. And in the hearts of people willing to help someone else stand again. That evening, as we prepared to leave, Emily stopped me. "Jake?" "Yeah." She smiled. "Thank you for not becoming bitter." I thought about that for a moment. Then I looked at Rachel. The woman whose broken-down car had started this entire chain of events. The storm. The guest room. The conversation. The community center. The lives touched afterward. And I realized something. Kindness had traveled farther than any of us could have imagined. Bitterness closes doors, I said. Kindness opens them. Emily nodded. And together, we walked toward the parking lot beneath a sky that was finally clear. The same kind of clear sky that appears after a storm passes. A reminder that even the darkest nights eventually end. And sometimes, all it takes to help someone reach the morning is one person willing to say, "Stay here. You're not alone."